We're on YouTube and we're on live on Instagram. So, guys, thank you guys so much for being here, being with us. Um, Man, one of the reasons why I am doing this um, this show is because I really want to make sure that we are all being inspired, being uplifted, and more than ever, because of the current time and the current season that we're in, I feel it's necessary. I feel that it's essential that we come together. We think critically. We think deeply about what's happening in our country. We think deeply about what's happening in our lives, and we continue to move forward. You know, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we're doing. I think out of this, there's several things that beyond the justice thing. I think there are certain people that they find their calling, they find their meaning, they find their significance in life because of what is actually happening right now. And so, man, one of the things before Dr. Darius comes on, I just want to share with you. If you have friends of other races and have friends of other persuasions and different things like that, um, make sure that you're having a conversation with your folks. Make sure that you're having a conversation with your friends. Make sure you're having conversations with individuals that you know. Just have an open dialogue with people. I see Dr. Daniels. Hey, man,
My brother,
can you hear me?
how are you? I can hear you
Okay,
just fine.
good.
Can you hear me?
I can, I believe so. Just want to make sure I can hear you. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Just want to make sure you can hear me. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Good. I'm maintaining, man. Just a rough couple of days. Um, but man, we're gonna make it, man. We're gonna make it.
Rough for us all.
Uh, so guys, thank you guys for joining. Simon Says I am excited. I'm elated to have a big brother of mine, to have what I consider a mentor. I can call him and say, "Man, can you give me some advice?" I'm significantly grateful that he is here on the show. Y'all put some hand claps or something in the comments and give Dr. Darius Daniels uh, a hand. If we was in church, we'd be like a hand clap of praise. I think there may be an echo on your end.
Okay.
Maybe just on one of them to just
Let me
maybe
see.
just on one of them. You maybe on your laptop or something. Turn the volume down or something. We're working through issues, man. I'm man.
Absolutely. Are we better now?
Are we better now? I think so. Yes. So again, man, thank you, Dr. Daniels, for being here. I want to say that I guess they can still hear it. But around about 2004, um, I came to Princeton University looking for a seminary to join, and the name Darius Daniels continued to echo throughout that campus. And everybody said your name. I thought you were an actual professor, but you were a student.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just felt so compelled to find out who you were and research who you were. And they were just saying you were a phenomenal preacher, you were a phenomenal leader. And one of the things that I began to do is I began to research who you are, find out what was going on, what was good. And I came about your website. I came about some things that you were doing on YouTube and different things like that. And I'll never forget there was a gentleman. I said, well, if he's not coming to campus, can I at least talk to him? And I don't know if you remember this or not, but you said you were not coming. He wasn't coming to campus, but I talked to you on the phone for like 2 minutes. And I remember the conversation that said, well, if this is the place for you, then I'm pretty sure you'll end up here. And I never saw you. But I did talk to you on the phone for just a brief moment. And then a few years later, um, from my father-in-law, or he was my pastor, he was my bishop at that time, that you were actually um, he was going to your church to actually preach. And I was like, Dharius Daniels, man. And I'll never forget the first time I heard you preach, man. There was just something that I was just amazed by. And you may say, man, that's been a long time ago. But the truth of the matter is, man, you've been a tremendous blessing to my life. And many people in our generation, you have been a significant voice, um, leading our generation to be thought leaders and to be critical thinkers. And man, I just want to say thank you.
Bro, thank you for that. Are you recording this, right?
I am.
Send that to me. I'm gonna play that for my wife tonight.
All right.
Remind her of her. No, I'm tripping. Man, listen, bro. You it was great connecting with you, and I don't remember the call, but I do remember us connecting. I remember your interest in Princeton. I remember you ending up at Duke. I remember you coming with Joby Brady when he came to the church. And man, I'm
Yeah.
just proud of all that God is doing with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's talk. I mean, um you're born and raised Mississippi, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Born, raised, killed, Michael,
Uh,
Mississippi. 630 people.
so I'm from the South too. I'm from South Carolina, man. One of the things that kind of led me toward that journey of having a theological understanding is because for some reason I grew up in Christianity, but I didn't understand Christianity. And I want to just know from you what led you on this journey of having this theological background. What led you to Princeton? Kind of what led you to kind of go on this journey of theological education?
So one, it wasn't intentional. Um, the way that I'm wired, I just had to be a guy that understood things. So I'm not a Christian because my parents are Christian. I'm a Christian because through personal discovery, I discovered, excuse me, through my own personal journey, I discovered that this was a superior worldview. It was the best way to live my life. And I say to this day, even if I wasn't a follower of Jesus, I would be a person that learned from him because he's the best human that ever lived. So,
Mm.
uh, so for me, I needed to understand because I wanted to put the stuff into practice, and I just felt like I had to take responsibility for learning what I needed to learn, so I can apply what I needed to apply, so I can answer some of my own questions that I had in my head. And I think that is what led me on my pursuit to learning. It was my goal wasn't learning, bro. My goal was and goal is to have a better life.
Yeah. And I really feel like I resonate with that because I was trying to make sense of life. I was trying to make sense of life. I was trying to make sense of death. I was trying to make sense. I mean, whew, with all this going on, I was trying to make sense of why and discover. I heard things about purpose. I heard things about meaning. It wasn't even more so about heaven and hell. It was more so about the fact that I'm here. And how do I make meaning out of my life? What is significant about who I am. Why did my parents name me Travis? Why is my last name Simons? How does all of this intertwine inside of faith? And I can remember at a young age that I wanted my life to mean something.
Hmm.
And I think that's what took me on this pursuit. That's what took me on this journey, is because for some reason I'm kind of led down a path of purpose. And I believe that everything that we're supposed to become and everything that we're supposed to be will be on this journey. That everything, as I walk this journey, I don't have to take a pit stop and veer off to the left and veer off the right. And even if I do, some way, somehow, I'll be led. That's even a part of the journey. And that's what kind of led me. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that I discovered. There's a whole bunch of things that whew, I that opened my eyes, that just simply changed and revolutionized my life. And here's the other thing, and I guess I went to Duke, you went to Princeton, so everybody kept telling me, Travis, don't go to a seminary, don't go to a divinity school, because if you go, you're gonna lose Jesus. You're gonna lose him. you know,
Yeah.
and what I really discovered, that I that it was through that process that who I thought he was before I got there, I really didn't know who he was. That it chiseled away at the pieces of my life to help me reimagine who he was.
Oh,
And
100%.
that's what changed my life. Say that again?
I said 100%. I get that.
Yeah. Um, so let's just talk for a moment in terms of your book, Relational Intelligence. Why did you write the book?
I got to answer. I've got asked that question a lot. So, two reasons. And so, one is like my life's mission is all about change. And so, when I say change, I don't mean morality necessarily. I mean, that's where change starts, not where it ends. But I mean, life as the creator intended. And so, I personally saw in my own life and then professionally saw in the life of people that I was serving. Um, that their greatest pleasure and greatest pain came from the same place, and that was relationships. I saw in my own life and in the life of people I was leading, you could have a high standard of living without getting relationships right. You can have money, but you can't have a high quality of life.
Mm.
So life as the creator intended requires that you get this relationship part right. And what I began to see was there were people who seemingly could get along very well with God, but not others.
Mm.
And so intelligence doesn't transfer areas. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
a person can be dope at managing money. It doesn't mean they can manage a marriage. They can be great at preaching and teaching. It doesn't mean they're going to be a great friend. And so I just felt like, okay, the ultimate example of a person who managed relationships masterfully was Jesus. And so, how can we take principles from his life and put it in a way where people can digest them and implement them in their own life? And so that's kind of what the book was about. But it's more than a book, bro.
Absolutely.
It's a movement. It's this a life skill. Yeah, if you don't get this right, you just can't get life right.
One of the things that I have seen over the last 10 years, or even more before I moved to Dallas, is the power of relationships. Or I would say the currency of relationships. That one of the reasons why I'm here in Texas right now is
Mm,
because of relationships. And I think so many times we stumble and we falter along the way because we don't really realize the significance of these relationships and how the relationships in our life. I'm not just talking about professionally.
Hmm.
I'm talking about from marriage, from friendships, from business partners, entrepreneurial endeavors, public servants. I'm talking about anybody that we connect to. There's so much value and meaning up under the surface that it's our responsibility to mine what is there. And I'm really not sure, and that's why I love that you wrote the book. I'm really not sure that people really understand the investment because we don't realize the investment. Why? Because we're only moved on an emotional level. So we move around in relationships based upon who hurt us. So we navigate our lives trying not to be hurt and don't realize that there's so much more and such deeper things that have so much meaning beyond trying to navigate through my hurt and never ever finding the passion, finding the significance of why this relationship is in my life. You have any thoughts about that? I don't know. We just talking.
Well, I just need to say amen. It's facts, bro. So this is what I think. I think it's easy to be more concerned with having good friends than being one.
Mm,
And so when you talk about
mm,
investment, that requires like kind of a paradigm shift. And that is, okay, not just what do I want from others, who is God calling me to be to others?
mm.
And actually who I am to others biblically is the greatest expression of my spiritual growth. So so spiritual growth isn't Bible knowledge and spiritual disciplines.
Wow.
That is those are the what Paul calls the spiritual exercises. Exercise yourself into godliness. Those are the spiritual exercises that make us godly, that help us grow. That's not growth, right? I don't go outside and lift weights and say this is growth. I say this is working out. This produces the growth.
Mm,
The growth, Galatians 5, Paul says, is going to be in fruit of the Spirit, not even gifts. Fruit is sign of maturity, not gifts. Corinthians had great gifts. Paul called them carnal. He said, y'all prophesying, I can't even give you meat. And so a lot of that fruit, temperance, which is self-control, but long suffering, gentleness, meekness, it plays itself out in the context of relationships.
mm. So, are you saying that we should quantify the relationship based upon how we are as a friend? Because I know we can place expectations on other people that we don't even live up to ourselves. So
Yeah,
we
so
want
I
people
think
to
it's
be
both
great
and.
friends. Okay.
I think it's both and. So in the book, I talk about four categories of relationships: friends, associates, assignments, advisors. Now, it's your responsibility to put people in the place they're supposed to be in, not the place they want to be in.
Mm,
Because sometimes bad things happen not because you got bad people in your life, you just got good people in the wrong place. So you're treating someone like a friend when they're really an associate. So you need to have criteria because you got to steward your relational life well if you're going to steward your heart well.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a standard when it comes to your relationships.
Right.
Yep. But I'm saying that standard should apply in terms of this is who I allow in my space, and this is who I'm going to be to people who I let in it.
Wow. You know, when you were saying that, I thought about this whole idea that relationships don't come with guarantees.
None.
And so there's a part of relationships that require risk. There's a part of relationships and the development of those relationships that take and I think so many people get hurt on so many different levels, even men. As a matter of fact, we get more hurt than I think females do at times because of how what we expect from someone and what we're willing to give ourselves. And I think for healthy relationships to really be developed, it requires a certain type of self-reflection to make sure that I understand that am I being a good friend? So guys, if you're watching this right now, I need you to type in, I need you to think about this deeply. Are you being a good friend?
Mm.
And sometimes being a good friend requires you to first start out with being a good person. It's like we put these categories: be a good business person, be a good man. At the core of it, can you just be a good person? Can you just be a good? A good person. Can you just be nice?
Yes.
Can you just be kind? Can you be courteous? Can you not expect a hug but never give a hug? So what would you say to someone who says this? And I'm gonna push along, because there's something I wanna pick your brain about. What do you say to the person who says, Dr. Dharius, I get you. I hear you. I hear your book. I know I'm a part of the movement, but I have so many broken relationships in my life. My father was never there. My mom, she was, had mental health issues or she was absent. I was raised by my grandmother. She was divorced. My brothers and my sisters, we don't have strong relationships right now. My personal or my intimate relationships, all of those are just weird or there's dysfunctional. How do I get myself back? How do I become the person? I want to divorce myself from that. I want to divorce myself from being dysfunctional. How do I become the person, the healthy person that I need to become so that these relationships can really, really flourish?
Travis, I'm going to say this, and let me preface my comments with this because I think it's such a great question. So therapeutically, my leaning is solution-oriented therapy.
Mm.
So I don't want anyone to feel like I'm being dismissive of their pain. But as a pragmatist, as a spiritual leader, as one who's called to change, I only encourage looking back for the purpose of learning the lesson or healing the wound. And then you got to look forward. So this is what I want to say. I hope it doesn't sound insensitive, but it is very practical. The one that broke you, not coming back to fix you. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we can take responsibility for our own healing. The one that broke you is not coming back to fix you. Some of them don't even believe they're wrong. Some of them don't have the character at this point to even remedy the wrong if they believe they're wrong. And many of them don't have the capacity to fix you. They couldn't even help you in the healing process. They can apologize. So sometimes we think we need closure from that person. We just want it. So that's why I would tell someone to start. And I'm going to say this, we're all, and I'm not comparing pain because some people have gone through some traumatic stuff. I don't want to dismiss that. But even if you had perfect parents, the Bible says we're shaped in iniquity. We're imperfect. So you're not going to come into this world perfect. Sometimes we assume if my parents did everything right, nothing would be wrong with me. That's just theologically inaccurate, right? There's moral depravity. We're broken. So this is what God does. He'll say, whatever you didn't get in natural family, I'll supplement in spiritual family. And if you will manage the relationships well and do some of the soul work, they'll become the catalyst for some of the healing that you need.
Man, your words are like a gumbo.
I'm
They gotta
hungry too.
sit a minute. You can't, huh?
I say I'm hungry
Huh?
too.
I mean, you just have to sit and let it just marinate. I mean, sometimes people like to eat gumbo hot. I like to eat it the next day because all the flavor in it, and it's like, wow. And what you're saying is so accurate because I do a lot of pastoral care. You know, my background at Duke is psychotherapy counseling. They trained us in pastoral care and psychotherapy counseling. And so there's a lot of what goes into finding out your triggers and finding out what happened to you in your past. And many times you end up seeing the brokenness, a pattern of brokenness. But the real
Mm,
reality is once a person you earn a person's trust for them to share and be open about their pain, it's our responsibility to put them on a path, right? Beyond that pain. And it requires them to move beyond it and lowering the expectations of the people that push them away. And here's what I will be very transparent with you about.
hmm
Y'all help me. Losing the most significant, meaningful person in my life, my father, has taught me something about the value of people in proximity to me.
mm,
It taught me something about valuing the pressure that's put on you and the people that are placed in your life.
mm,
And that every person, see, when you look through the lens of an unhealthy relationship, you see people as problems. And you don't see the purpose and the significance of who they are in your life. And at a younger stage in my life, and I'll say it this way, at a younger stage in my life, I saw my father as pressure. I saw him as pain. I saw him in my immature state, his revelation and his wisdom to help me be a better man. I muted him.
mm,
But I get to the point years later, once I become a husband, once I become a
mm,
father, and the very thing that I muted, I needed. The very thing that I saw as pain, the very thing that I saw as a nuisance to me in development was actually trying to mature me in development. And I just want people to embrace the fact that there are things that you see on one level But man, when you grow up, you start seeing what really matters.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this pandemic is so huge for us, is because it's teaching us what really matters.
Mm.
It's teaching us what we should really value. And the relationships that you could leave, you could get on a plane and, you know what I'm saying? Because I deal with a lot of business people and entrepreneurs, you know, they can just, you know, they can fly by their problems. You know what I'm saying? They can get around and just move around. But man, when you're in quarantine and you can't go nowhere, you're confronted with the thing that you've allowed to grow. Because I also believe that there's the fruit of the spirit, but there is also the fruit of the flesh. So a part of that is if I've allowed the fruit of dysfunction to live and develop in my life, I have to have enough strength to cut it down.
That's right.
So what do you I preached a message the other week called The Courage to Cultivate. And in it, I discovered that there are people in the UK that what are people doing a lockdown? And I realized in my research that there were people that started planting gardens, and there was a spike in the UK of people growing things. And I discovered, and I created a message around the fact that even in people's pain, they're planting things.
Mm-hmm.
That even in a crisis, people are cultivating things. What would you say that you have learned through this pandemic?
Man, you got to tell me where to start. So one, this is what I've learned. I've learned that although I didn't confuse resources with source, I did assume God needed certain sources to resource me. So let's just take, I'm a pastor, right? God has shown me through the pandemic, I'm so much God, I don't need a building. I never thought the building was the source. I always knew God was the source, but I just thought this is what God chooses to use. God is something. He said, man, I don't even need a building. I'm that God. I'll do it over the internet. So one, I've learned that.
I'm never bound to your comfort.
Two, I've learned the importance of comfort with your clarity. Now, this is what I mean by that. That's the best way I could say it. I'm trying to think of a simpler way to say it. So it's one thing to be clear on your calling. It's another thing to be comfortable with it. So,
please unpack that.
Right. So I'm doing this thing. I'm doing this thing in June, this series of teachings called Insecure. And I'm dealing with biblical characters whose insecurity almost assassinated their assignment. So I'm dealing with insecurity in relation to your purpose. And so when God called Moses, Moses' response was, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
I'm slow of speech. He called Jeremiah. Jeremiah talks about his age and his inability to speak. He called Gideon. Gideon is talking about his past, his clan, his tribe. Like I can go on and on. So God calls and their insecurity answers. You got a whole nation of people waiting on them to get over themselves. But their insecurity is coming from comparison. So why would Jeremiah say, I'm but a youth? What's that got to do with anything? It's because all the other prophets were older than him. Why is Moses saying I can't speak? Because he's used to people who speaks. Why is Gideon saying I'm from this tribe? Because he feels like kings come from other tribes. I'm not from the tribe of Benjamin. So comparison is a calling killer. You can be clear on what you're called to do, but it can be so unique, it can be so different, it can be so out of the norm, and it cannot be as sexy as some other people's calling. That you feel like it's less significant because it's less popular.
John the Baptist.
Come on. But bro, more ain't more. Just because they got more doesn't mean they are more. You feel me?
Wow. You made me think about some research ideas.
So I'm clear on mine. That's my point. I'm clearer. And I'm so comfortable. It's scary. Let me tell you why, Travis. I feel like our current leadership trends in churches now, it's very formulaic. It's like lead. Buildings, people. I'm with all that. We got a bunch of campuses, whatever. But God told Jeremiah to tell the people, I'm going to give you pastors after my own heart who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. So the biblical model isn't just feeding without leading or leading without feeding. It's both. So this is my comfort level, bro. When I die, I'm going to leave the kingdom with more than buildings. I'm going to leave them with words to live by. So while everybody else is trying to be the next whoever in our current age, I'm like, yo, I'm on some Charles Spurgeon. I'm on some D.L. Moody. I'm on some Martin Lloyd Jones. I'm a lead, plant, but then I'm a teach, I'm a preach, I'm a lecture, I'm a write. Because I'm not going to leave the world with just buildings. Charles Spurgeon is preaching from his grave. I'm going to preach from mine.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, so yeah. Whoever's next, you next. You can have it. I ain't racing.
No, I want to feed. I want to be a feeder. I want to be a cultivator. And I really discovered, I think what you're saying is really the significance of what it is. What are you planting in this season? And it's not just through entrepreneurship. And this is why I have SimonSays. This is why we're on this platform right now. It's not so that my name can be great or somebody can see me with this person or that or this or whatever. It's because our world and the people that we're called to influence and speak into their lives, they need knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
You can get stuff. Stuff ain't the problem. But the lack of wisdom and knowledge to understand why you have it. I mean, the fact of the word, we just talking, y'all. Y'all just getting in on a conversation that I would call him. I let y'all in on the conversation of what we would have because and most of the time, like you can see, I'm just listening to him and I'm about to wreck my car. The reality of it is I feel like the word faith, pistos or pistos, is a twofold word. It's knowledge of and it's action.
Mm-hmm.
It's a twofold world. It's a compound that you can't operate in faith and not have knowledge of something to operate in.
Sure.
You can't get to my house and you've never been there before unless I give you the address and you put it in your GPS and something navigates you to it.
Yeah.
And the real reality is that people got stuff, but they're aimlessly walking through life, not understanding the significance and meaning of the things that they have in life.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Last. Okay. So I got to put this thing about Moses because I discovered and I stopped preaching and teaching that Moses had a lisp.
Mm.
Moses didn't have a lisp. He had a desert problem.
Mm.
Moses' insecurity came through staying in the desert too long. Because the Bible says in Acts chapter 7, when Stephen is given the history of the church, of the Old Testament, when he's given the history of the Old Testament, it says that Moses was well learned and a man of well speech. So therefore, he went to the Harvard of Egypt. Moses never had a lisp. Moses never had a speech impediment. He was very articulate and he was being groomed to be king. He was prince. But when he is so disappointed because somebody tells him that he ain't Pharaoh's daughter's son, some way, somehow, Acts chapter 7, he goes among his people and he perceived that he was a deliverer and that they would recognize who he was. But when they didn't, he ran away to the desert. He didn't run just because he killed a man. He ran because they didn't perceive him the way he thought he should be perceived.
Mm.
And he runs to the desert. Check this out. He runs. If you read that Acts chapter 7, it's crazy because it's been because we don't preach. He got a list. Moses got a list. He can't talk right.
Yes, sir.
But the but the truth of the matter is when you research Moses and the time period by which the deliverance was supposed to happen,
Mm-hmm.
Moses stays in the desert because the desert is a place that is a place of isolation and seclusion where you are there to discover yourself. But if you stay in solitary confinement too long, you lose yourself. So when God comes to Moses, when God comes to Moses, wants him to speak, he ain't done it in so long, he done forgot how to do it. It's a muscle it's a muscle that he used to use, but because he ain't used it in a long time, he don't even have the confidence that he can do it right. And here's the truth of the matter. I feel like some people have exactly what they need to go and be everything that they have been called to be. But they have stayed in certain seasons and places and relationships too long that they've lost themselves.
Mm.
I don't know if that's in your series, but
It's in there now.
the insecurity that comes because of what you stayed too long.
Powerful.
Okay, I got a few more minutes with you because, guys, he's a very busy man. He is not only a pastor, he's an author, transformational coach, but he is everywhere. He's been able to cross denominational lines. He's just a voice to an eclectic kind of group of people from different camps, different people. But I want to talk about, if you don't mind, I didn't ask you this, so I apologize for it later. Let's talk about, can we spend just for about 5 to 7 minutes? Can we talk about this George Floyd situation? I know
Sure.
I know we're not gonna have time to unpack everything.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Sure.
I'm hurting, man. I am hurting because the majority of my life, when I went to Duke University and I took a class with Dr. J. Cameron Carter, and he talked about the indoctrination of racism through the lens of baptism. It changed my life. And to see what is happening in our world right now through men that look like me and my sons. Again, we probably should have had the whole conversation about it because we don't have enough time to unpack it. But the truth of the matter is, man, I'm hurting. Because I am one that I do believe that racism is there, but I'm trying to be a part of changing the narrative of Black folks and white folks. I think my life, I think my marriage, I think my ministry, I think who I am as a person, I have tried to model through my own life what it means to be a bridge. And it seems as though the work that you do personally, the work that you do professionally to be the bridge gets broken again in in our society. It's almost like you take 40 steps back because of what we saw happen in Minneapolis. You have any thoughts that you want to share about that?
No, one, I would just say I would want Christians specifically to understand the biblical call to empathy. It's almost as if some people feel like they need to be able to understand and empathize. No, we weep with those who weep. And so I think the larger body of Christ has to wrap their heads around that part, right? There's a biblical responsibility to empathy. You don't get to judge my pain as a Christian. You don't get to tell me whether or not I should hurt. Your call is to weep with me. And in your empathy, you'll get understanding. Um, so I think there needs to be a lot more of that. What concerns me about the typical evangelical response to this, which I'm greatly encouraged by what I'm seeing from the evangelical community with this, which I consider myself a part of. But historically, my issue with the traditional evangelical response was there was a lot of lecturing and not enough learning. Oh, that's not happening. Y'all overreacting. Don't do that. You're making this about race. You're being divisive. It's like, so is racism divisive, or is me talking about it divisive? Like, like, uh, so, so I feel like that's really important. But it is communally traumatic. It reinforces fears. Wives fear their husbands leaving the home. Parents fear their kids leaving. And some people feel like when you don't understand the data, you'll think people are being hypersensitive. Like, oh my
Mm,
God, y'all overreacting. This is just one incident. No, this is one incident you know about.
right.
Yeah, we got the experience and the data that backs it up to say we have a reason for this to be a legitimate concern. Now, so we need to grieve as African Americans. We need to be angry, but sin not.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to grieve, I think, and everyone needs to be angry and sin not. Anger is a part of a stage in grief.
Sure.
Yeah, it's shock, it's anger, etc. So we need to feel that. When you don't feel, you won't heal. But the remedy to this is twofold, because the cause of it is twofold. Sin in hearts, the gospel's the answer to that. Sin in systems, the law is the answer to that. The law protects humanity from people whose hearts won't change. And biblically, the biblical role of a king, the Bible is clear, is to ensure justice, equitable treatment of the citizens, not equal outcomes, but equal opportunities. So, with that being the case, I feel like it's got to be approached twofold. One, the sin of racism has to be addressed. Racism is the only thing people think they try to answer by just saying, preach Jesus. Like, pastors don't say that with tithe and offering. Yeah, when it comes time to get that money, nobody's saying, preach Jesus. No, they teaching the tithe.
You want a new building, you don't say, preach Jesus.
Yeah, you preach giving. Yeah, so the John 17:17, the gospel is one of God's sanctifying instruments. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is true. So the light of the gospel shines light in areas that need to be addressed that we don't see. Right? That's the unknown self. Like Jahari's window, it's the unknown self. Right? So you got the whatever. I ain't go through all that. But the point I'm making is there are parts of you don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't see. And then the gospel shows you. You're like, yo. And so some people don't know they're battling with racism because they think racism requires intentionality and consciousness. They think to be racist means I have to try to be. Not realizing that some of your bias can be unconscious and you don't even know it's there. And this is confirmed by people who used to have some of this in them. And then as they testify about how they've changed, they're like, yeah, there's one spiritual leader in Dallas who talks about this a lot. He said he would be sitting in his neighborhood and somebody black would ride by in an expensive car and he would say to himself, how do you get that car? He wasn't a Klan. He wasn't violent. He wasn't, but he didn't know that was in his heart. And it was unconscious. And so one of the things that has to happen is spiritual leaders have to teach on the sin of racism more because it's more prevalent than they know.
Let's
Sure.
define spiritual leaders. Are we talking about black spiritual leaders? Or are we talking about white evangelical leaders?
No, so I'm talking so I'm talking both.
Okay.
I'm talking both. And the reason it needs to be done more in the evangelical community, in the Anglo community, is because they have access to ears that the average African-American leader does not. Does that make sense? So if everybody's talking to who they got influence with, then the people are hearing it. So, and the reason it needs to be talked about, I'm just going to throw this out theologically, and then we're going to wrap up because I know our time's up. The one area where God blatantly says, you can look at this and see if a person actually has authentic relationship with me, is in the area of hate. This is what he said. He says, if you say you love me who you haven't seen, and you hate your brother who you see every day, he says you're a liar. That when a heart has been authentically converted, you can't hate. So I'm saying that I can't judge you. I'm saying, but when there is hate attached to a Christian, that is the one place the Bible gives me permission to call your conversion into question. I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your role is. Yeah, if you can hate and then go and sit in a church on Sunday the Bible says, then I got the right to question whether or not your conversion is authentic. So I'll stop there because we're over our time. But that was
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time. And man, many blessings to you, your family, and your church, and your book, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Take care, everybody.
Take care.